Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the big ideas from chapters 9, chapters 12, chapters 13, and chapters 14. And in each of these chapters, they focus on different areas of communication, obviously, but they also tie in all together and kind of show us like the correlation between communication styles and like how we go about our day-to-day living and professional life. So we'll get started, we'll jump right in. So with chapter 9, they talked about concept orientation. This one talks about the orientation within families or um, conversation oriented families. So basically, these are families that value open discussion or allow open discussion. So instead of parents saying, like, do this because I said so, they usually use what the authors would call, positive constraints. And that basically means that they guide their kids to think for themselves and to form their own opinions about the world instead of having a set mindset. The chapter also breaks down 4 types of family communication patterns. So that's consensual, protective, pluralistic, and laissez-faire. So the consensual families are usually like they allow for open conversations, but the parents usually have the final say. Protective families are more traditional families, so they focus on obedience and they don't really encourage too much open discussion. And then we have pluralistic families, which are more democratic, so everyone's opinion counts, they value everyone's say, and they encourage everyone within the family to speak their minds. And then there's laissez-faire families, which there isn't much communication at all and people kind of do their own thing. There's not really like a time where they come together and talk about things. In chapter 12, they talked about the CMC process. This was all about the computer mediated communications. Computer mediated communications. So the main idea here is that CMC isn't really about the technology itself. It's basically how people use technology to interact and build relationships. So instead of focusing on how to build software or design platforms, communication scholars are more interested in how we use those tools to connect with our world. So anything in relation to texting, social media, email, or even video calls, Zooms, things of that nature. Those are all forms of CMC. Something that stuck with me in this specific chapter was the online impressions formation. So in today's world, so much of how people see us comes from our online presence. And I know that most of the time we always get those like talks of like digital footprint is real, and it's basically because our social media profiles give off like the first impression, especially if someone has never met you in real life. This really matters for professionals too, because employers, for example, often check a person's online persona before hiring. So if someone's online behavior doesn't look too professional, they might be a little hesitant to actually hire you. For chapter 13, they talked about professionalism. The chapter kind of defines a profession as something that requires mastering complex knowledge and skills. And that mastery basically comes through education, training, and experience. So becoming a professional doesn't just happen overnight. It's something that takes time and effort. So you do have to be intentional. They talked about some key points and qualities like ethics, respect for others, personality, responsibility, and appropriate language use. For example, being professional means communicating respectfully, even when we do disagree with others, and taking responsibility and like holding yourself accountable and maintaining boundaries within a workspace. So, what I took from it was that professionalism really is about consistency, showing up with integrity, treating others with respect, and using communication that reflects understanding and maturity. Next, we'll go into chapter 14. This one kind of talked about secrets tests in relationships and things of that nature. This is a little more personal than what we were kind of being taught about in the previous chapters. So these are indirect ways that people try to figure out whether they stand with someone, like where they stand with someone without asking them directly. So there were 7 types of these tests. There were directness, endurance, indirect suggestions, public presentation, separation, third party, and the triangle test. I think the one that really stood out to me was the triangle test. So this is when someone involves like a third party to see how their partner reacts. For example, like mentioning another person was flirting with them to test to see if like mentioning another person flirting, for example, like, oh hey, so and so is flirting with me today, and it just tries to see their reaction. Like that person tries to get a reaction out of them to see if their partner gets jealous. So it's kind of a sneaky way of trying to see where they stand, but it shows people how subtle communication can measure like trust, commitment, or an interest within the relationship. And this chapter kind of made me realize how much communication, even like the direct, indirect kinds, reveal about our relationships. And sometimes we say a lot without saying it, or sometimes we like communicate a lot without even saying it directly. So, all in all, when you put all of these chapters together, there is a clear theme, obviously, communication and how it shapes our understanding of ourselves and our connections with the outside world. So, whether it's how we were raised in our families, how we present ourselves online, or how we act professionally, it all comes down to how we use communication to build meaning and connection. So, that is my reflection. I hope everyone was able to understand what I was trying to reflect or translate. And yes, have a great day.